Welcome to The Explainer. Have you ever had that feeling that the economy just isn't working the way it's supposed to? That it feels like a game that's kind of rigged for someone else? Well, today we're diving deep into a theory from author Bernie Davies that argues you might be right. We're going to break down how our modern economy might be structured to pull wealth to the very top and then explore what this analysis suggests could actually be done about it. All right, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with a huge economic shift. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty, the actual mechanisms of how this all works. After that, we'll see how politics keeps the whole thing running, look at a potential breaking point up ahead, and finally, wrap up with some of the proposed solutions. So let's get into it. Okay, first up, we have to get our heads around the central argument here. And it's a big one. That the entire purpose of our economy has been flipped on its head over the past few decades. So let's start with a question I think a lot of us have probably asked ourselves at some point. It just feels like the system isn't really delivering for most people. The author argues the answer isn't just a bad policy here or there. No, it's something much, much deeper, a fundamental change in the wiring of our entire economic system. So what's the big idea here? The author points to this one key term, financialization. And what does that even mean? Well, think of it this way. For a long time, the main way to get rich was to, make stuff, build cars, invent new medicines, grow food. But under financialization, the game changes. It becomes all about making money from money, speculating, managing debt, trading complex financial products. The financial sector basically becomes the tail that wags the economic dog. I love this slide because it just lays it all out so clearly. On the left, you've got the old way of doing things, retain and reinvest. It was kind of like a healthy ecosystem. A company made a profit, and that money went right back into the business. New factories, better tech, higher wages for workers. But now look at the right. The new model is extract and distribute. Profits are seen as something to be pulled out of the company as quickly as possible and handed over to shareholders, even if it means starving the company of the investment it needs to grow in the long run. Okay, so that's the big picture shift. But how does it actually work? Like day to day, how is this wealth getting siphoned upwards? Well, the author points to three main channels that all work together. It's not just one thing. It's this kind of three-part machine that's constantly running. It operates inside our biggest companies, it affects us directly in our homes and our bank accounts, and it's even changed the basic rules of how our society takes care of people. Let's take them one by one. First up, what's happening inside corporations? The whole game is now driven by one single idea, shareholder value maximization. It sounds fancy, but it just means the company's only real job is to make its shareholders richer. So instead of using profits to develop a groundbreaking new product or give a raise to the people who actually make the company run, that cash gets funneled into things like stock buybacks to pump up the stock price. The end result? Real, on-the-ground investment in wages just flatline. Wow. For the second mechanism, the one hitting us at home, the author uses this phrase, an extraction tax. And that's such a powerful way to put it, right? It's not a tax you see on your pay stub that goes to the government. It's a hidden tax you pay to the financial system, a slow, constant drain on your ability to get ahead. And this is how that tax actually gets paid. Think about it. We just saw how wages have stagnated because companies aren't reinvesting. But at the same time, the cost of everything you absolutely need, a place to live, an education for your kids, healthcare, has gone through the roof. So what do? You borrow. You have to. You're forced into debt. And every single interest payment on that mortgage, that student loan, that credit card, that's wealth flowing from your pocket straight to a financial institution. And this brings us to the third piece of the puzzle, the great risk shift. Back in the day, the deal was different. Big institutions took on the big risks. Your company gave you a pension you could count on. The government provided solid public services. Now, that whole model has been flipped. All that risk has been pushed onto you, the individual. Your retirement? It's no longer a guarantee. It's a 401k you have to manage, riding the crazy waves of the stock market. Essential services are being sold off, becoming just another way to turn a profit. Okay, so we have this powerful system in place. A huge question is, why doesn't anyone stop it? How is this whole thing kept in place? According to this analysis, it's no accident. The system is actively protected and reinforced by our political structures. The source argues that our own government locks this system in. You've got regulatory capture, which is just a fancy way of saying the foxes are guarding the henhouse, the financial industry is basically writing its own rules. Then there's the tax code itself, which has been shaped by lobbyists to reward wealth from stocks way more than wealth from a paycheck. On top of that, the government has pulled back on investing in the things we all share, like good roads and schools. And the final lock on the door? A campaign finance system that, according to the author, allows big money to call the shots and make sure no real change ever happens. Now, this is a really critical part of the argument. For a system like this to continue, you have to make sure people don't get together and demand something different. The analysis here claims that the culture war is the perfect distraction. It's like a magician's trick. It takes all that real, legitimate anger people feel about their economic struggles and redirects it. Instead of looking at the economic system, people are encouraged to get angry at each other over cultural issues, keeping everyone divided and conquered. So the system is chugging along, extracting wealth, keeping people divided, but now the author throws a massive wrench into the works, a force so powerful it could break the whole machine, automation and AI. And this creates a huge fundamental problem, a real head-scratcher the author calls the paradox of consumption. On the one hand, technology is getting so good we can make almost anything we want super cheap with very few workers. Awesome, right? Well, here's the paradox. If robots and AI are doing all the jobs, then nobody has a paycheck. And if nobody has a paycheck, who's going to buy all the stuff the robots are making? You create an economy that's amazing at producing, but terrible at creating customers. Yikes. This is where the analysis gets pretty grim if things don't change. This table shows the potential endgame: widespread, permanent unemployment. A future where almost nobody owns a home. We just rent from massive corporations forever. And your ability to get healthcare or an education depends entirely on how much money you have. The author gives this future a name that should send a chill down your spine: neo-feudalism. A new kind of feudal society with a tiny group of tech lords on top and everyone else on the bottom. Okay, so after all that doom and gloom, you might be thinking, is there any way out of this? Well, the author says absolutely yes. This future is not set in stone. The final part of this analysis is all about the solutions, a comprehensive plan to change course and, as they put it, reclaim the republic. The first big bucket of ideas is about hitting the brakes on the current system and basically putting it in reverse. Things like changing the rules so corporations have to think about their workers and communities, not just shareholders. Creating public banks so people have an alternative to crushing debt. Making huge investments in things like healthcare and education so they're not just for the rich. And, of course, getting big money out of politics and giving power back to workers. Now, this next part is really interesting because it basically says, don't just wait for the folks in charge to fix this. It proposes a bottom-up strategy, using ballot initiatives at the state and local level to change the rules, challenging bad laws in court, building power from the ground up by electing local leaders who are on board, and even using direct economic pressure, like organized strikes, to force the issue. All right, so how do we deal with the whole robot situation? This pillar is all about future-proofing our society. One huge idea is to create sovereign wealth funds. Think of it like this. We tax the incredible productivity of AI and automation, and then we distribute that money back to every single citizen as a dividend, a share of our collective automated wealth. Other ideas include treating our data as a public resource instead of letting tech giants own it, and creating a safety net, like a universal basic income, so that your ability to survive isn't tied to a traditional job that might not exist anymore. So we've got all these big ideas, but how do you actually build them? The analysis suggests we also need new kinds of tools. It points to decentralized technologies, using Holochain as one example. The core idea is pretty simple. If you want to build new systems that can't be taken over by a powerful central group, you need to build them on a foundation that is itself decentralized. It's like trying to build a public park that no single person or company can own or shut down. And this chart really shows the potential. You see how a different kind of digital plumbing could tackle these problems head-on. It could let communities create their own credit systems without the banks. It could give people a secure way to organize politically without fear of being censored. It could help us build social networks that aren't designed to make us angry. And maybe most importantly, it could put you back in control of your own data. And so in the end, that's what this whole analysis boils down to. It's a choice, a really stark one. Do we fundamentally rethink and reform our economic and political systems? Or do we just keep going down the current path towards what the author warns as a future of structural exclusion for the many? It's a massive question, and it really frames the entire debate about where we're headed and who our economy is actually for.